Hi, my name is Austin Gill, and I like to build fun and interesting things for the web. In my videos, I'm going to be building out new projects, checking out different technologies, and sharing the things that I learn along the way. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to tag along, then why don't you subscribe and we can build something fun together. Hey, how's it going? Austin Gill here with another web dev tip for you. We've recently been building this freaking fast forecast app. And one thing that I wanted to look at that I thought was cool was the way that we handled icons on this app. So it was really important to take into account the considerations for accessibility in this app. And let's take a look at what we have here. We have a couple tables. The first table has a lot of space, so we were able to use some emojis and some text to represent what this table row was talking about. But if we look down further on the page, we have other tables that don't quite have a lot of room. So we ended up omitting some of the text and using just the emojis. And that had a considerable impact that we had to take into account. So how did we handle that? Because really, if we're building this to be accessible, we don't want users with assistive technology coming to the page and seeing that, oh, sweaty face is a 37% chance and sunglasses is a 1.74%. What does that even mean? I don't know. So let's look at what we did to make it a better experience for both sighted users and users that are relying on assistive technology. So the first thing we did was we don't want users to come to this table row and have their assistive technology read out sunglasses UV index, right? Because really we just want it to be treated as UV index. So the first thing we did was looking at this table header. If we open that up, we actually have two elements in there. One is the emoji wrapped in a span tag with an ARIA hidden HTML attribute set to true. Setting that to true gives a hint to assistive technology to say, hey, just ignore this. Don't bother reading this out. You can skip on to the next thing. And with that, if someone is using a screen reader on this table, they'll see that the table header here just reads UV index, and then the value is 1.09, which is pretty handy if you ask me. No unnecessary, weird, awkward noises. So then moving down here where we don't have text to accompany those table headers, what did we do? We had to do something similar and a little bit different. So with that sweaty face, that table header, we actually did the same thing with a ARIA hidden true attribute on the emoji, but we also gave it a title. So that way, sighted users that are relying on a mouse can actually hover over it, and they'll give a little bit extra context about what is going on there. They're not seeing that there's a 37% chance of a sweaty face, although I guess it is, but it's a 30%, it's 30% humidity, which is handy. But we also don't want to leave that information out for users that are using assistive technology. So we also include another span with a class of visually hidden, and we add the text of humidity because unfortunately title is not a reliable enough source for assistive technology. So let's take a look at this visually hidden class because it's actually pretty interesting. We could have done something like display none, and that would be good enough to hide that element. Unfortunately, setting an element to display none also removes it from assistive technology, recognizing it. So instead, there's a pretty common pattern of defining a class, usually sometimes visually hidden, and it has all of these properties that I'm not going to go into. You can go ahead and Google it or look for it online. It's pretty common, like I said. But what it does is it essentially takes that element out of the flow of the document. It takes it out of the visual representation, but it keeps it in the document as far as accessibility or assistive technology is concerned. So when a screen reader lands on this table header, it will read something like table heading, humidity, and then the next table cell, 37%. So it's pretty handy tool. Those two combined, two handy tools in your tool belt to build websites for everyone coming to your site, sighted users, unsighted users. And I think it's worth saying that there was one little issue that we had, which is if you come to this website on a mobile device and you're a visual user, unfortunately, you won't see that those titles, because that requires a mouse and mobile devices don't have that sort of hover interaction. However, as a user that is a sighted user and uses a mobile device, I kind of made the call that, I can deal with that. I think these emojis are close enough to represent or to express what I'm representing here, where we have cloudiness, precipitation, humidity, and UV index, particularly because we've also called out some of those before. So that was a call that I made. You may not want to. If you want to be completely expressive of what's going on, you could add a legend or a key that shows, what each emoji means with their textual representation. That's it for my tip today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, find me on Twitter and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And please be sure to like and subscribe these videos so I can keep on making them. It was a pleasure, and keep building those accessible websites. All right, I'll see you later.